The story starts with a girl named Jiachi, a passionate cartoonist who has a hard job to create a new story. Trying to write an amazing and romantic story with a hint of revenge, they create a real masterpiece where it is unclear until the last what the ending will be. Mochen is a charming girl and heiress of a family engaged in jewelry. Suyu is a famous designer and founder of a jewelry business. Yunkai is a famous creative designer, and Bailey is Yunkai's wife, who loves dancing and jewelry, but is a simple housewife. In the evening, Bailey and Yunkai celebrate their 10-year wedding anniversary by inviting guests to a party. Among the guests are Suyu and Mochen, who came as a happy couple in love. Despite the celebration and the presence of his wife, Yunkai follows the charming Mochen, who has a glass of red wine. As it turns out, the girl herself lured him to a quiet place without witnesses, as they are lovers hiding their relationship from others. Passionately kissing and not afraid of being exposed, they do not suspect that Bailey sees what is happening. At some point, Mochen notices her, but does not react in any way as the girl silently leaves and returns to the party in honor of their wedding anniversary. A few minutes later, Yunkai comes on stage and gives a celebratory speech as if nothing happened. The man promises his spouse to love her for the rest of his life, and declares that he is ready to fulfill a few of her most cherished wishes. Bailey takes the microphone and doesn't know whether to tell the guests the truth, when suddenly Mochen pours alcohol on the wedding cake and sets it on fire, causing a small fire, because of which the ceremony is cancelled. Enraged, Bailey approaches the girl and demands an explanation. Mochen confesses without hesitation that she intends to destroy her happiness and is ready to do anything to destroy Bailey's marriage. Soon after, Mochen confesses to Sui that she has not been faithful to him. Disappointed with her husband and her life, Bailey tearfully jumps into the water in an attempt to end her life. At the same moment, someone pushes Mochen into the water, and she too goes down. It would seem that both girls will drown, and the story can end there. But magically, it doesn't happen. At some point, as if using magic, both girls switch bodies. As a result, the brazen mistress turns out to be in the body of a modest and faithful wife, and Bailey turns out to be in the image of a self-confident Mochen. The next morning, Bailey in Mochen's body wakes up in the hospital, and goes in search of her own body. She finds the girl in one of the wards, but she is in a coma and does not regain consciousness. Here the girl also meets Yunkai, who has no idea that his wife and lover have switched bodies. Upon meeting the girl, the man asks her to be discreet so that no one will suspect them of being lovers. This request hurts Bailey, as her husband continues to lie to her. As she tries to leave the ward, she feels worse and at one point loses consciousness. Soon she wakes up in the hospital room and meets Suyu, who has decided to visit Mochen. The man demands an explanation and Bailey wants to tell him the whole truth. When Suyu tells her the name of her husband's mistress, Bailey becomes ill and as a result of dizziness, she loses consciousness again. Soon she is discharged and has to go home with Suyu. Once in his house, she realizes 3 important things. Suyu does not want to live with his wife, they only pretend to love each other. As the house is full of hidden cameras, and the most important thing is that their relationship is fake. The next morning, Bailey convinces him to take her to the hospital for a checkup. The girl wants to see her husband and whether Mochen has come to her senses. While passing by the right room, Bailey notices Yunkai being interviewed by reporters. The husband claims to love his wife very much, but she is well aware that it's all a lie on camera. Bailey is sure it's a lie, but the husband tries to look believable to convince the journalist and the audience of his words. Disillusioned with the traitor, Bailey returns to his mistress's house. Here she is forced to meet Mochen's family, getting to know her mother and sister. Hiding in Mochen's body, Bailey cannot expose herself to them, so she behaves with extreme restraint and silence. A little later, the girl has to meet Mochen's father, an influential businessman engaged in jewelry. He orders his daughter to get married as soon as possible, so that he can ensure the further development of the business, and later pass it on to her by inheritance. Soon their conversation is interrupted by Yunkai, who comes to visit Mochen's father and offers to cooperate. Overhearing this conversation, Bailey realizes that her husband is using the fact that she is in a coma to establish his business and create a strong alliance with the family of an influential businessman. Soon, Bailey finally realizes the fact that her entire life and years of marriage have been a sham. It was all kept solely on profit and was created to enrich the greedy Yunkai, who is willing to do anything to increase his income. Feeling disappointed, Bailey just longs to tell her husband the truth about being in her lover's body, but doesn't want to spoil the unpleasant surprise. The next morning, Bailey goes to meet Yunkai to find out how long he and his mistress have been lying to her. Once at the prestigious hotel, the girl meets her husband and realizes that the lovers often met here. In the hotel room, Yunkai shows the girl an engagement ring and proposes to become his wife. Angry over what she has heard, Bailey bites him and runs away from the hotel with tears in her eyes. Stopping at the riverbank, the girl throws the wedding ring into the water, thus starting a new stage in her life. At night, Bailey has a nightmare in which Mochen attacks her screaming and tries to strangle the girl. Waking up from her fright, Bailey realizes that she needs to find a way to return to her own body, but doesn't know how to do it. The next morning, she goes to a cafe to meet up with her old friend named Cha. She refuses to talk to the girl as she assumes it is Mochen, whom she hates. Realizing that her friend won't believe her crazy story with the transmigration of souls, Bailey leaves, leaving her a birthday present. Deciding to learn more about the life of Mochen, in whose body she is, Bailey goes to meet her psychologist Mr. Pang. The man informs the girl that her parents divorced when she was just a child, and her current mother is actually a stepmother who dislikes her. The woman often treated the girl badly, and she complained about it to her father, but he paid no attention to it. As a result of her father's inactivity, Mochen became a cruel and rude girl, who treated men with contempt. At the same time, the girl was constantly in need of attention and wanted someone by her side. It was for this reason that she found a married man capable of giving her some of his love and time. Knowing much more than before, Bailey decides to do everything to destroy Yunkai and comes up with an elaborate plan of revenge. First of all, the girl goes to Suyu's office to try to convince him to refuse to cooperate with her husband. Despite the bride's entreaties, he refuses to help her. Thanks to Suyu's memories, it becomes clear that once he was in love with Bailey, but they were teenagers, and he was unable to confess his feelings to the girl. Now this is what prevents him from confronting Yunkai, because he doesn't want to hurt Bailey's husband, whom he would like to be close to this day. The next morning, Mochen's sister goes to see Suyu to get to know him better and find out how their relationship is going. After meeting Suyu, the girl tries to understand if they are doing well and if their life together is going according to the plan of Mochen's family. Moxie asks the man a lot of personal questions, making him a little uncomfortable. Suyu answers evasively, as his relationship with his fiancée is a sham that no one knows about, including her own sister. Once the meeting ends, Suyu goes home and contemplates a contract to be in a better position. The next day, Bailey meets with Mrs. Feng and tells her about her relationship with Suyu. At the same time, Suyu meets with her father and discusses a possible collaboration with Yunkai. Knowing nothing about Mochen's work, Bailey shows up at the company and presents her new jewelry quite well. In the evening, she meets with Feng's family and thinks about telling them the truth about Suyu and Mochen only pretending to be a happy couple. At the same time, the parents are hopeful that the couple is doing well. Deciding to play along, Bailey and Suyu kiss passionately. But Mrs. Fei still suspects that their feelings are not sincere and mutual. In an attempt to spoil his sister's happiness, Moxie invites Suyu and 3 other men who met Mochen before him to a meeting. The men claim that the brash and conniving girl has ruined their families, openly accusing her of hypocrisy. Bailey, who is in Mochen's body, defends herself and claims that the men are to blame for the way their relationship developed. One of the wives of these men attacks the girl and tries to hit her, but Suyu defends the girl and takes her home. The next morning, Suyu and Bailey meet up with Feng's family again and find themselves at the old Mochen school. Watching the girl closely, Suyu notices that Mochen has somehow changed and reminds him more and more of Bailey. In the evening, the girl decides to talk to Mr. Feng and claims that Suyu is a very good person who should not get involved with Yunkai. After thinking about her words, the man calls Yunkai back and informs him that neither he nor Suyu will cooperate with him. Realizing that his mistress is involved, Yunkai meets with Bailey, unaware that in Mochen's body is his wife, who knows the whole truth about him. He threatens the mistress and promises to tell Suyu that she has been stealing from his family if the girl doesn't help him get a lucrative contract. A few days later, Suyu meets with Mochen's parents and declares that he is ready to organize a wedding with their daughter. Mochen again tries to spoil the atmosphere and reminds them that her sister was often a terrible person. Suyu unexpectedly defends the bride and suggests changing the topic of conversation without bringing up the past. In an attempt to talk more about himself, Suyu recalls how his real parents lost their lives in the distant past. He was just a child, but was able to achieve great heights thanks to the support of people who believed in him. Feeling sympathy for Suyu, Bailey pursues the man and kisses him passionately. Going for a night out, Suyu confesses that his parents were broke and it led to tragedy. Having grown up, he has started his own company and wants to destroy the competitor who bankrupted his parents. Hearing this, Bailey declares that she is ready to help him, although she understands little about the business. Soon preparations begin for the wedding of Suyu and Bailey, still hiding in Mochen's body. Journalists try to talk to the couple and interview them, but Yunkai shows up at the event and brazenly pushes the girl into the hallway for a private conversation. He questions her about what's going on, but Bailey lies, claiming it's all part of her plan. Yunkai suggests that the girl not go that far and become his wife, unaware that Suyu has heard their conversation. Assuming that Mochen wants to betray him, he decides to terminate the marriage contract with the girl. After making a public statement, he meets the girl and admits that he regrets meeting her. A little later, she is met by her father, who also yells at the girl and blames her for what happened. The next morning, Suyu meets with Yunkai and offers to cooperate. At the same time, Suyu insists that the man not abandon his wife, who is in a coma, and not disconnect her from life support. Trying to make the business as profitable as possible, they not only team up, but also go to Mochen's father, offering to work as a threesome. The girl's father is ready for such a project, and the three companies merge into one to become the market leader and make themselves golden. Upon learning of this, Bailey begins to abuse alcohol and falls into despair. The whole plan of revenge is in danger of failure, and the girl does not know what she should do next. A few days later, Mochen's father organizes a family dinner, to which he invites Suya and Yunkai. Soon Bailey shows up and feels uncomfortable when the men start talking about the wedding again. The girl feels sick and dizzy, so she leaves the living room, after which she passes out and falls to the floor. Suyu discovers Bailey and, grabbing her in his arms, hurriedly takes the girl to the hospital. She does not regain consciousness for several hours, which greatly frightens the man. At some point Bailey returns to her body, and Mochen tries to strangle her to get revenge, but luckily it turns out to be a nightmare. When Bailey wakes up, she sees the caring Suyu by her side, and realizes that he is not indifferent to her. A few days later, Suyu finds herself at Cha's restaurant, and learns that her business has been doing a little better lately. Yunkai is happy that his business is successfully prospering, and thinks about breaking the terms of the contract and finally getting rid of his wife. He is the only one who has the right to take her off life support as soon as he wants to. A little later, Suyu visits Bailey, who is lying in a coma, not realizing that Mochen is actually in her body. At one point the girl's heart stops, and the doctors immediately take her to the operating room. As it turns out, her brain could malfunction at any moment if surgery is not performed immediately. Yunkai is against the surgery as he is afraid his wife will wake up, Bailey in Moken's body intervenes in the conversation and convinces her husband to allow the doctors to perform the surgery. After a long wait, they learn that the surgery was successful, but the girl is still in a coma, though there is a chance that she will soon return to normal life. Upon returning home, Bailey asks Suya about when he fell in love with her. Without realizing that the girl in front of him is the same girl, the man confesses that she was his only friend at university. A little later, Bailey goes to Yunkai's house and finds herself in an awkward situation as the man starts kissing her from the doorstep. They are stopped by the doorbell ringing and the girl's friend bursting into the apartment trying to take compromising photos. Taking advantage of the situation, the girl steals her own picture book, then leaves the house with Cha and gives her his book. Soon the businessmen launch a joint line of jewelry. The main surprise is that all the designs were taken from Bailey's book, and her plan is to accuse the company of plagiarizing designs. Cha with a book of drawings makes a real scandal, which attracts the attention of journalists. Suyu officially apologizes and leaves the conference, and Mochen's father claims that he was not responsible for the jewelry design. In the end, only Yunkai remains at the presentation, desperate and surrounded by journalists. He tries to justify himself and claims that he didn't plagiarize his wife's designs, because she allowed them to be used in his business. At the same time, a loudspeaker is turned on, through which a dialogue is played in which Yunkai states that he does not love his wife and wants to take her off life support. Additionally, Bailey turns on a screen that shows pictures proving that Yunkai has been cheating on his wife with Mochen. After Yunkai's reputation is completely destroyed, and the journalists have a high-profile scandal, the girl begins to have problems. The father refuses his daughter, considering her guilty of what happened. The girl agrees with the decision, but before packing her things and leaving, she penetrates into the office of a businessman and steals information from his computer. After that, the girl meets Suyu and gives him the received material. After studying the data, he realizes that Mochen's father is the heir of the businessman who destroyed his late parents' jewelry business. In the course of the conflict, it becomes clear that the real culprit of the events of the past turned out to be the businessman's wife, and he, having learned the whole truth, decides to divorce her. A few days later, Mochen comes to her senses and, looking in the mirror, realizes that she is in Bailey's body. Unlike Yunkai's wife, she doesn't rush to expose herself and doesn't freak out as if she was expecting something like this. In an attempt not to expose herself, Moken pretends that she has lost her memory and knows nothing about herself. Protecting the girl and not realizing that it's not actually Bailey, Suyu chases the reporters away and calms the beauty down, promising to help her remember everything. Bailey assumes that the girl is blatantly lying and, left alone, tries to expose her. Upon hearing her own name, Motion smiles grimly and exposes herself. Bailey pounces on her to get the girl to tell the truth, but she starts screaming and calling for help. Suyu protects the girl and kicks Bailey out in Mohyun's body. A little later, Mochen in Bailey's body returns to Yunkai's house, as she has to live with her husband. A competition begins between the girls, as both are not interested in the loser and cheater, but in the sweet and caring Suyu. Bailey asks her husband's mistress to stay out of their communication, but Mochen is not about to give up. Using her experience and Bailey's looks, she wants to take every advantage to make Suyu fall in love with her and force her to be by her side. The next morning, Mochen meets with a psychologist and promises to become his wife if he helps her destroy her family. The girl also learns about who exactly pushed her into the lake, after which she ended up in a coma. This person was a stranger whose brother had lost his life over an unrequited love affair with Mochen. After meeting this girl and pretending to be Bailey, Mochen, trapped in her body, offers to bring the matter to an end. She wants to get rid of Bailey, but she does it gradually, solving all the problems created during the period she was in a coma. Mochen tries to solve the jewelry plagiarism problem. Soon, Mochen's father announces a celebration to which he invites friends, relatives, and business associates. At one point, the distraught girl decides to pour water on Bailey, but Suyu covers her with her body. The girl declares in front of the reporters that she is responsible for what happened to her brother, but Bailey has nothing to answer, because it was actually Moken in whose body she is forced to hide her true identity. At one point, Bailey wishes she could tell Sui the truth, but realizes she can't explain it all. Moreover, things are getting worse as Moken masterfully uses her image and does everything she can to become successful. Meanwhile, Moken meets an old friend and jewelry designer. Using her new appearance, the girl tries to make the man fall in love with her and make him her ally in the war against stronger enemies. Soon the designer and Moken show up at the office of Moken's father to offer an interesting option for a mutually beneficial collaboration. The man accepts the offer with great enthusiasm, not realizing that the girl is his daughter. According to the contract, the old man must not only work with Motion as Bailey, but also lock up his own daughter in a psychiatric hospital. Determined to do so, he bribes a psychologist to change his daughter's medical history and send her for compulsory treatment. Meanwhile, Motion actively seduces Suya, but sees that his attitude towards her remains cool. He has been in love with Bailey all his life, but now does not feel the same sympathy for her, which irritates Mochen hiding in this girl's body. Cha also tries to talk to his friend, but notices that she is now rougher and colder, so he starts to distance himself from her. Mochen's true nature makes itself known, causing Cha and Suyu to suspect that this is a completely different person, though they can't understand how this is possible. At the same time, Bailey returns home as she is suddenly attacked by two men trying to kidnap the girl. Suyu calls her but gets no answer and realizes that something terrible has happened. Going to the house of the businessman and Mochen's father, Suyu learns that the girl has been sent to a psychiatric hospital as she needs urgent treatment. Rushing there, Suyu picks up Bailey and after pushing the kidnappers away, takes the girl to his home. The next morning, he meets the psychologist and demands an explanation. Pang claims that the girl has mental problems and really needs treatment. A little later, one of the businessmen tries to buy Bailey's shares, but she and Suyu refuse to cooperate as they have a more elaborate plan. After deciding to leave town for a while, Bailey meets the dead man's girlfriend and apologizes for what happened. It wasn't her, it was Mochen. But it's important to the girl that her grieving sister is able to calm down and let the situation go. Meanwhile, Mochen and the designer continue to buy up shares and get 55% of the stock, making them the major shareholders of the company. Once in the office, they suggest that Moken's father resign as president, or else everyone will find out his dirty and terrible secrets. Realizing that he is cornered, the old man gives up his position in favor of Chen, who heads the jewelry company. At the same time, Bailey starts a new life in a beautiful house in the middle of the mountains. She and Suyu seem happy here, but suddenly their vacation is spoiled by Mochen, who once again uses her charms and looks to try to convince the man to return to the city and leave the girl he loves. Despite his former crush on Bailey, Suyu refuses Mochen, who is hiding behind her guise. Soon after, Suyu's best friend tells him many truths about who was behind the many provocations, scandals, and revelations. After learning that Bailey is involved in dubious operations, Suyu goes to her company and tells the girl that he is disappointed in her. At the same time, Suyu doesn't believe that the real Bailey would do such a thing, but the girl threateningly yells at the man, forcing him to leave her office. After that, she also angrily communicates with her new companion, reminding him that there is only one person in charge and it's not him. Meanwhile, Suyu takes a close look at Mochen and realizes that something is wrong with her. The more he watches her, the more he realizes that behind that face is Bailey, who he has been in love with all this time. The girls have recently developed too many similarities in personality, habits, and behavior, causing Suyu to be confused. The way the jewelry is made finally convinces the man that it is not Mochen, but Bailey in front of him. Determined to find out, he takes the girl's hand and asks her about it, asking her to answer honestly. With tears in her eyes, Bailey confirms that it is her and tells him exactly how it happened. Suyu apologizes to her for treating her badly at first, as he thought it was actually Mochin, whom he can't stand. As a result, a new love story begins between Bailey and Suyu. Going to the real Mochin, Suyu tells her that he knows the truth and will do anything to destroy her. As their eyes meet, they don't say a word to each other and realize how determined they are to ruin their enemy's life. Despite careful plans to destroy her opponents, Mochin finds herself in a difficult situation as her companion and psychologist refuse to cooperate with her further. At the same time, it becomes known that Yunkai has become a beggar, so he lives in a small house and has to pay rent while having no money. Finding herself in an equally difficult situation, Mochin visits her former lover and offers to become allies to destroy Bailey and Suyu. All is well between the loving couple, but Bailey feels uncomfortable when she sees her appearance. She wants to return to her body, but doesn't see how that is possible. Meanwhile, Mochin offers Yunkai a lucrative contract and promises to pay off all his debts if they manage to overpower the happy couple. After signing the contract, Yunkai receives an elegant tuxedo and learns exactly what Bailey is guilty of. Yunkai meets Bailey in Mochin's body and accuses her of crimes that weren't committed by her, but by the real Mochin. The girl has been stealing and Yunkai can use this information to arrest her, but there is another option. He offers to make love to her and spend the night together, after which the evidence of her crimes will disappear. Bailey is forced to accept the offer and invites Yunkai to her home. Meeting the man in the evening, the girl accuses him of betraying her and cheating on her for years, brazenly taking advantage of her gullibility and naivety. Beginning to tremble with fear, Yunkai guesses that the woman in front of him is not his former lover, but his wife. Frightened, he tries to escape, but stumbles upon Mochin in his wife's body. Suyu and Bailey inform Mochin that the designer was actually cooperating with them, so her scam failed. It is Mochin who must pay off the company's debts, or else she will go to jail. Mochin asks Yunkai to attack Bailey, but soon he too realizes that the girls have switched bodies. Realizing the reality, he decides to attack Mochin. But Suyu and Bailey have a hard time calming him down. Mochin decides to end her life and jumps into the water. Bailey decides to save her and jumps in after her. After the girls are pulled out of the water, it becomes clear that nothing has changed. Bailey hoped that she and Mochin would switch bodies again, but it doesn't happen. A short while later, Suyu proposes to Bailey to become his wife. Meanwhile, Mochin falls into a coma again, but this time Yunkai decides to take care of her and support her so that the girl doesn't leave this world. 6 months later, Suyu and Bailey become a successful couple of businessmen who realize a new project. They sell jewelry of the future and give interviews to annoying journalists. Unfortunately, Bailey was never able to return to her own body, but the girl is no longer worried about it. She has come to terms with the image of Mochin, and people no longer hate her for the past sins of the real Mochin. A new love in a new body makes Bailey happy because she is finally with someone who appreciates, loves and waits for her. Suyu and Bailey have no doubt that now nothing and no one will interfere with their happy life together.